Mr. Chabot from Ohio, you have 5 minutes for questioning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Back in the 80s, I was on Cincinnati City Council, and Ronald Reagan was president, and the drug scourge in this country had gotten so bad that we declared a war on it. We had a program, Just Say No. We had about 10,000 overdose deaths nationwide back in '82. And this year, we think it'll be approaching 60,000 overdose deaths. And so it's gotten incredibly bad out there, as the witnesses on this panel have already testified to, and I know the next panel will say from different aspects, but much the same thing, I'm sure. Back again in my district, and I represent most of the city of Cincinnati, during 1 week last summer, we had 174 reported overdoses just in 1 week. We had a young girl, 9-year-old girl, in March, just a couple months ago. She called 911 after both of her parents overdosed in their SUV on heroin. She told the dispatcher that she was scared and that her parents, quote, won't wake up. The girl did not know where she was or what was wrong with her parents, but she did know enough to call 911 for help, and that call literally saved her parents' life. But no little girl or boy, 9 years old or at any age, should ever have to be placed in that situation. So it's terrible out there, and Ohio has been one of the worst states with respect to this horrific drug problem that we have, especially heroin. But and I'll get into a question here. I'm not just going to ramble on, but especially when it comes to combining heroin, which is already a terribly dangerous drug, with these synthetic things like fentanyl, and that's the one that's been particularly deadly in Ohio, because my understanding is it's something like 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, and then you mix that with the heroin and you have a deadly brew there. I guess my first question is, and I'm supportive of this legislation, if either one of you, I would welcome you this. I assume you've had a chance to look at the legislation that we're dealing with here. Could you tell us how will this legislation make your jobs easier? How will it make the American people safer right now with respect to drug overdoses than they are now? And I'd invite either or both. If you could turn the mic on there. Thank you.
I can say I'm a 30-year investigator with DEA, and it's always helpful to law enforcement to be proactive rather than reactive. The situation we're dealing with now, it's after the fact, after the uptick of ER visits, after the uptick of deaths, frankly. And so the new legislation, more nimble legislation, would give us the opportunity to be proactive and get in front of these circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
And Congressman, I would echo Ms. Ashley's comments and add that from a CBP perspective, given our focus on interdiction and the potential deterrent nature of actions taken by this body, that would not only deliver greater consequence and provide more agility for all of law enforcement to apply the law when it comes to these illicit substances, if we can deter further, if people from beginning to even consider trafficking in this type of a scourge, that obviously will enable us as well and assist us in what it is we do every day.
Thank you. I've got a minute left that I've got. If I could turn just to a related issue, and you've already mentioned this, but it's also my understanding, and you indicated somewhat this in your testimony, that our first responders who are there to save lives and protect people can be now themselves at risk because of their exposure to these drugs. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, what the risk is and what ought to be done about it?
With respect to CBP, again, Congressman, we recognized early on as we began to see an uptick, particularly in the fentanyl, which really is the primarily and the most dangerous of the synthetics that we've encountered to date. several years ago, in recognition, actually working alongside DEA to understand the dangers for our frontline men and women, we began to roll out training and awareness training and musters to those frontline officers and agents who most would come encountering these substances. And in addition to that, being present in about 34 locations, and the locations where we're seizing the most of these substances is where we've also deployed trained officers and agents to administer the naloxone, the Narcan, if you will, so that in case there is an accidental opioid overdose, we can immediately respond to that. So that is something that we're continually trying to do our very best to protect those frontline men and women who are unquestionably our most treasured resource.
Thank you. My time's expired, Mr. Chairman.